Okay, here I am.
Great. I'm glad you joined.
Oh, exploring my inbox in a variety of venues. It's just interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't come from me. It comes from Zoom. So I think a lot of people get confused on the invite.
Yeah, it's hard to track it because
Search
I
for it.
always want to sort by your name, and that's different. So, but it's what works. How are things in Astoria? Because we've got another meeting tonight of the neighbors about the land
Oh,
use planning.
oh, there's another one tonight.
One last night, the Gail had
Was
gone home, which was sensible of her, but her home internet wasn't adequate to keep the meeting going. She came in and out.
oh shoot.
Well, they were ready to go, but it made sense to pull the plug so that we had um, reliable connectivity, and she didn't have to be concerned about that.
Yeah, Astoria is we're getting slushy now. So there is still some icy spots. So I don't know if she's gonna have a strictly Zoom meeting or hybrid.
I think strictly Zoom would be better. And my only concern, how do we balance her well-being and her capacity to get home afterward?
I think the roads will be clear. It's gonna warm up plenty today.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
the roads should be fine tonight.
okay, fine. Well, I'm staying safe.
Yes, good.
Director Nickel, yay.
Hello, Commissioner Thompson. Hello, Commissioner Webb. I see Dawn on. Looking forward to meeting the rest of you. I see Harmony too.
Oh, good. Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Crazy couple days.
Several. There's a boil water for parts of Wheeler this morning.
Oh no.
Not surprised.
Yeah, pretty low lying and pretty, I would say thinly resourced. Have
Yeah,
you,
I've seen a lot of those pop up actually across the nation. A lot of water notices associated with failing infrastructure in the cold weather.
you know, um, it's such a big problem. We're almost ready to start the meeting. I've had a lesson in applied water issues with the situation in Evergreen Acres. So I've gone from the theoretical and the broad, deep to the absolutely focused on the local situation. It's heartbreaking for them, but it's a good education for everybody else.
Teresa, just so you know, I just got a text from Chair Cuello. He's on his way, so he'll be joining us pretty soon.
Sounds good.
To ask Clatsop County if it's thawing out over there. Is that a so-so, Monica?
Yeah, it's hit or miss in the Astoria, Warrenton area. There's still a lot of slush and some of it's still a little frozen depending on where you're at. Commissioner Thompson could probably speak more to what her neck of the woods is like.
I'm in front of the fire under a blanket. I have been there for days. I expect to stay there until everything frozen is gone because I've driven in Michigan, I've driven in Alaska, I've driven in Oregon. I'd rather stay out of harm's way because there are people who don't understand the laws of physics and the concept of friction coefficients.
I can appreciate it. My oldest daughter and her family lives in Hammond at the park there, and they have their local resident herd of elk that decided that they take refuge underneath their porch, their awning. So it's been quite magical, I think, for the kids, my grandkids.
We do have 3 commissioners. Should we go ahead and get started or wait for Chair Cuello?
I just texted Commissioner Banks too to see if she'll be joining. If we could just give one more minute and then
Okay,
I think
sure.
we can go ahead and start if that's okay with the board. So
Please do. For those of us who are on time, it's always good to keep moving.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else had trouble. I was stuck in Zoom, rotating dial for like 10, 15 minutes. Wouldn't even let me in.
What?
Yeah. Finally
Oh.
got.
In regard to the functionality of the internet, are there any metrics for measuring situations like this? Because I believe Commissioner Teoka is right. That's one reason I don't stay at home is because I need to be able to have electrical power and functional internet to do my work. And you know, that doesn't always happen, but I don't know that the internet providers are tuned into that allegedly functional, but not really dynamic that we have. I've never heard of that. That's just a general question or concern. And I'm not looking for anybody to know what the question or the answer is really. Except to say, I believe Commissioner Toyoka.
Well, if it's okay with the board,
Chair
I'll
Kuhl
go.
is Chair Kuhl is just signing out.
Okay, I'll defer to him.
There you go.
My apologies. Have we started or have you been waiting patiently? Oh, I'm so sorry that I didn't get here earlier. Thanks again for being patient and waiting. We'll go ahead and get started. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. We have 5 items on our agenda, and first we'll start with the county manager update. And Dawn.
Thank you, Chair Gurula, members of the board. Just a few updates. One, weather. Obviously, it's been a challenging few days. I want to give a lot of appreciation and praise to our staff that have been doing amazing work. And as you know, the county does not close. And so we've been closed to the public, though, for a couple of days, and that has worked out well, not to encourage folks to be on the road. At the same time, we've been fully operational. I just want to mention to our public works crews that have been working long hours to maintain the roads. They've done an amazing job and show their commitment every day. Sheriff's office responded to a lot of accidents in all parts of the county, also doing a great job. And then all the support staff that are maintaining vehicles, that are maintaining buildings, dealing with ice and parking lots, you name it. Everybody's just risen to the occasion, and it's just another example of how, Clatsop County staff shows up when they're needed. So the weather's going to get better. Today is supposed to be in the mid-40s. And so hopefully some of that ice will have a chance to melt and we can get back to the regular 50s and cloudy scenarios that we all embrace so enthusiastically here. I did want to mention, I heard Commissioner Thompson talk briefly about Evergreen Acres or mentioned it before the meeting started. As I think we all know, this is going to be an ongoing concern. And so the water has been turned off again over at Evergreen. We are mobilizing some of the water that we had stored out there, and it'll be available to the public starting at 11 today. It has nothing to do with the quality of the water. It's just there was some leaks in the system apparently, and so the operator turned it off and is trying to fix the leaks. There hasn't been a public notice that's gone out from the operator, so we're trying to communicate with folks, and so we will be doing that regarding water availability. Hopefully it'll be a short shutdown, but I just want to let the board know that it is down again, and we'll be monitoring it and supporting folks out there in the meantime. We have water out there, and we will continue to have water out there because, like happened today, we just never know. So we'll be prepared to support that community. The other is that there was a public meeting scheduled for last night regarding the LADUC housing amendments. Unfortunately, there was some broadband issues. It's been rescheduled for this evening. And that will be at 5 o'clock this evening. So if you didn't miss anything, if you couldn't tune in yesterday, so we'll take another run at it today. It'll be begun by using the county equipment. So hopefully that will help get us through that meeting. But besides that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Chair Quilla.
Thank you, County Manager. Please pass along our appreciation to the entire staff, particularly our Public Works Department and our Emergency Management Department for all they did to contend with the weather conditions. Again, County Manager.
I was just gonna, you just prompted me, Chair, sorry. I did want to mention emergency management and our communications team. We're doing such a better job communicating with the public in these events, both by CLATSUP alerts, by different media releases, and there's a high level of coordination with our city partners. And so there's just a lot of good here. I mean, we're still in the midst of it, but we'll be doing an after action review to identify anything that we could have done better. But I just think it's really, we are doing all the right things, and I just want to thank staff and thank the board for your support as we've hired some really quality folks that are doing great work. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager. I want to relay a message from Craig Hoppus, who's the superintendent at Astoria School District, and he had a high praise for the job that Justin was doing and our communications team. So it makes it a lot easier to make the decisions about whether they will have delays or cancel school for the day. He says it's just a drastic improvement in coordination between the county and the schools. So yeah, just want to pass that message along. Commissioner Thompson, you have your hand up.
I do, sir. I echo the praise and the appreciation. It's really wonderful trends. I would wonder if the ham radio community is being involved in the emergency management part, because I'm noticing I'm getting a lot more emails from my fellow hams down in my part of the world, and just wondering if that's in there. If it is, fine. If it isn't, I expect there's a reason for it. And I really appreciate the quality, the caliber, the consistency, and the accuracy of the information we're receiving. Thank you.
Yes, agreed. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other comments, questions? Let's move on to the items on our agenda. First is CLATSUP Community Water Knowledge Exchange Project on page 3. And we have Gina Nickel, Executive Director of the Association of Oregon Counties, and Harmony Burright, contractor to the Association of Oregon Counties, joining us. County Manager, Assistant County Manager, do you want to give us a kind of an overview of what we're discussing?
I can really quickly, Chair Coelho, members of the board. This was a project that was started a bit ago as part of an AOC initiative, which I know Gina will probably provide a little bit more background on. But it was really to get some input from the community about what some of their concerns regarding water issues are, and then what some of the next steps might be. So it's really some of the preparatory work that allows us to then have a more focused future-looking initiative to identify where some of those holes are and figure out a path forward. So that's kind of the background. I'll let Gina and Harmony provide the rest of the detail. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, County Manager. Director Nickel.
Great. Thank you, Chair Quayla, Commissioners, and Manager Bond. It's an honor to be here with you today. Let's dive right in. In 2021, AOC County Solution Programs launched a project to create commissioner-convened water needs forums. And the goals were to support and provide assistance to navigate the increasingly complex world of water, with the desired outcome of creating a more water-secure future for Oregon communities. The purpose of these forums, of course, was to identify water needs in communities around the state by bringing all stakeholders together and creating an inventory of water needs based on the participation and descriptions provided. This was based on an opt-in model where counties that were interested requested a special assessment from the Association of Oregon Counties. CLATSUP County was one of those counties, and County Solutions Program Director Andy Smith worked with contractor Harmony Burright to carry out the agreed upon scope. Harmony has years of experience in water, including her work as a water planning coordinator for Oregon Water Resources Department, and more recently in the legislature as the water policy advisor to Representative Mark Owens and as the Joint Water Caucus Chief of Staff. Harmony is joining this meeting today to present the outcome of the work she completed on behalf of CLATSUP County. Harmony.
Good morning. Gula, commissioners, thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to share with you all the kind of process and outcomes from the community water knowledge exchange that occurred in 2021 and 2022. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. We'll get this set up. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of background about the project and the process. So as Gina mentioned, this was a project overseen by the Association of Oregon Counties. 3 counties, Tillamook, Clatsop, and Columbia, all opted in, which was really beneficial given some of the similarities between these counties. I was on contract to Association of Oregon Counties, and AOC was also in partnership with many other organizations who provided support to this effort. So the original scope and scale of this was really kind of all water everywhere, which anyone who's worked in water knows what a big and kind of universal issue this is. But I think there was a desire to kind of understand at that broad scale, kind of what are the breadth of water issues faced at the county level. And then from that, like what opportunities might be possible. So as we think about like all water everywhere, we're talking about water across the county, we're talking about water infrastructure, we're talking about flooding, we're talking about droughts, we're talking about affordability, we're talking about the partners that work on water, we're talking about the projects that are happening or that people desire to happen, talking about water as the basis for economic development, ecological needs, kind of the whole gamut. So it was a big scope for a modest scale at the county level. The approach for this effort was really, we used the Ford family approach, their community building approach, and really focused on the first step, which is listen to learn. So this was not a planning exercise. We didn't, get all the way to plan together. This really was about listening and trying to understand the current status within the county. And then if you kind of look really closely to your screen, the community building principles, these are something that we also used, where go to where the people are, start with what you have, build on what you, start with what you know and build on what you have. Be profoundly inclusive, keep the community at the center of the work. So for me, as a contractor and someone who does not live in Clatsop County, it was incredibly important to gather and hear from community builders within your community. The challenge with going to where the people are at this point in time is, if you recall, late 2021, we were still on the heels of COVID, and getting together in person was still kind of questionable in nature. So most of this was held virtually, despite a lot of desire for in-person gatherings and meetings. We just weren't able to make it happen given COVID protocols at that time. So this process took place from November 2021 to June 2022. And as I mentioned, given the fact that I'm not from Clatsop County, assembling people with intimate knowledge and relationships within the county was the first step. There was initially a desire, to have a countywide everyone come conversation, but it became very clear early on through conversations with community builders that unless the purpose was very clear and the outcomes were very clear, they advised against a kind of, assessing or including everyone in the county until the county could come up with a more specific and clear purpose and outcome that they were seeking public input around. So this process really focused around the community builders and trying to glean their knowledge and understanding of water in the county, as well as work that I did on my own to kind of gather and assemble information and resources, and then where people were identifying gaps, conduct select one-on-one conversations to inform the proceedings. So what was produced from this, the initial product that was envisioned was an inventory of water needs and issues, which, as I mentioned, is a very, very big scope. We did build an inventory. It's still publicly accessible. It's built on a platform called Padlet, which allows for kind of community or a broad sourcing of information towards a single product. We had 5 meetings wherein people shared their knowledge and expertise on this issue, and that was captured. And then there was a summary of emerging themes and process considerations. In addition to the information that emerged at the county level, we also took a look at state and federal data sources of where you might go to help you understand further water-related issues and needs, as well as some of the funding opportunities at the state and federal level. So in the initial community building meetings, there was a lot of different perspectives on what the focus should be. There was very clear input from the community builders that there needed to be a focus, that water as a focus was maybe too big and too broad and a bit overwhelming to try to tackle. And so we started in on trying to develop a shared problem statement. And these were the 5 problem statements that generated the most support, but there still was not a, kind of singular agreement on the highest priority problem statement. But these are the 6 that really rose to the top for Clatsop County. One is about balancing the competing uses and needs of water. So everyone needs water. Fish need water, people need water for drinking, we need it for economic development. And the idea is how is water currently balanced between these uses, and how do we want to do that in a very mindful way going forward? There was a real acknowledgement that water information is very fractured, very difficult to access, and that people really didn't know where to start. They didn't know who to call to when they had questions. It just was very time consuming to answer questions. And so there was a real desire to have some sort of comprehensive collection of information and or a central person, a point of contact where people could just go to get started. There was recognition that there's some major data gaps in the county, and that one of the low-hanging fruit for the county, especially amongst partners, was identifying where data exists, where the gaps are, and then starting to strategically fill some of those gaps, recognizing that the more data you have over a longer period of time will help to inform decision-making. The other one was around infrastructure and wanting to really gain a holistic understanding of the water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure needs as it relates to current, community quality of life, as well as future economic development. And people saw this as a real opportunity for the county to kind of wrap its mind around individual community needs and then identify gaps where the county might be able to fill in. There's a huge amount of interest on the flooding problems, and I'm sure that these are kind of cropping up again this year on US 101. So some people really wanted to focus in on a very particular issue and see progress. They didn't necessarily want to take this big picture view to water. They wanted to pick something, a very high priority thing, and make immediate progress. And then the last one is an understanding that within the community, there's a real difference in narrative around water, that there isn't necessarily a shared understanding amongst different interest groups, amongst different stakeholders about the water needs and challenges.
Hey, Harmony, sorry to interrupt. Is there
Yeah.
possible to click that pop-up off of the screen, or is that?
The pop-up.
Oh, maybe it's. I don't
Oh,
know.
is it that? Did I do
That's
it?
That's perfect.
Sorry about that.
No, no
Wow,
worries.
that's annoying.
No worries. Okay,
Thank you for that.
sure.
So we also worked with the community building team to identify the strengths and opportunities in the county, as well as the weaknesses and threats. The participants really saw that county leadership was a major strength, and they really wanted to see county leadership on this issue into the future. So they saw that the county beginning to convene these conversations was really a positive thing. They also acknowledged there was a ton of knowledge and talent and energy in the room, that the people that we assembled were the right people. They weren't everyone. It wasn't comprehensive, but there was a really good start. There's a lot already happening in the community, and an acknowledgement that we should understand what's happening in the community and build on that success where possible, rather than duplicating or reinventing the wheel. There's a huge amount of potential for people to increase trust. There aren't necessarily many opportunities around this particular issue for people with competing ideas or competing interests to come together and work through those. And people saw a real opportunity to do that into the future. Local leaders are really seeing that at the state level and at the federal level, people are paying attention to water. So there's an idea that there's a real opportunity right now and in the near future to tackle this issue. And in Clatsop County, an acknowledgement that things aren't terrible yet, that there are issues, but really Clatsop County has the opportunity to be proactive on this front and not reactive like many other places across the nation and frankly across the world. So in terms of weaknesses, limited data was really identified as a weakness. And as I looked at publicly available data sets, it's kind of clear to me that the state isn't necessarily investing in your county in terms of data collection, probably because of the lack of perceived crisis. And so there might be a need to be more proactive around advocating for yourselves in terms of investments in data infrastructure. There's a limited coordination capacity, so there aren't really people who are paid to bring people together around this issue, unless it kind of intersects with another partner-led or county-led effort, such as the comprehensive land use planning effort that you've been undertaking. Water is fragmented, siloed, everyone's approaching it from their own perspective, and it's really tough for people. There aren't many forums that exist for them to really understand it from a system perspective and try to gain an understanding from someone else's point of view. It's very complex, difficult to know where to begin. People get overwhelmed. And there's also this kind of tension between it's big and overwhelming and we need to act. And so finding the sweet spot of allowing for systems thinking, but also finding something tangible enough that people really feel like they're making progress and able to make progress on those really kind of big, scary issues. Also within your community, a recognition that water issues can be fairly controversial and divisive. There really needs to be a concerted effort to bring people together around this and build a sense of community around this issue, but that there tends to be some mistrust around processes, especially ones that either move too slow or move too fast. So again, trying to find that sweet spot. Through this effort, we found so many resources, so much information about water in Clatsop County. But again, it's all kind of siloed and fragmented. There isn't like the one-stop shop for people to find this information. And also, there are past sources of information that maybe haven't been utilized in current efforts or could be utilized in current and future efforts without having to, redo it. So really relying upon existing resources. And if we have time, I'd be happy to run through one of these in particular that could be interesting for you all to just see, like, what is the status of our water resources in the county? So in terms of potential next steps, there are a lot of places this could go. And it comes back to like, what is that desired outcome or purpose from the county's perspective? Because there's so many different sources of information, it could be beneficial to synthesize all of that information of like, what do the existing reports and studies say? What actions are in the existing plans? I think that would help you expedite without having to do too much public process, expedite your understanding, and then also start to get, capture in a really succinct way, what are those challenges that we've already identified? And what are those actions that we've said we could take? What's the status? Are we taking those actions? Or maybe that's where we can pick up. Across the state and really across the nation, there's not really good integration of land use planning and water planning. And this is an area for significant improvement for everybody across the board, but just really thinking about how do we incorporate water decisions into land use planning decisions. And through this effort, we started to look at some of the model codes through, in Oregon, what are other counties doing? And what can a county kind of pick up and use without having to develop it on their own? Again, huge amount of work already happening on the ground in Clatsop County, really incredible partners and partnerships, and a ability for the county to elevate, lift up some of that work and highlight some of that work in your meetings or forums, figuring out how to partner on some of those things. A really interesting one that came out of the meetings is the North Coast Watershed Association working on a tool to make data more accessible. And they're bringing together a lot of diverse partners around that. So opportunities for the county to kind of lean in and support partner work. There's an interest and desire around building up a OSU Extension or Sea Grants ability to support, be that one-stop shop and the point of contact for complex water issues. Interestingly, a person was hired in the South Coast essentially for this person. I think there's a real opportunity for this position to be secured within the North Coast area to serve a similar function. There's a ton happening at the state and federal level and a real need for counties to be advocating for themselves within these different levels of government. So I think there's an opportunity to track what's happening and advocate for yourself in these spaces. Again, data gaps and filling data gaps and advocating for filling data gaps is low-hanging fruit that I think people that generally there's broad agreement around. I don't think there's a whole bunch of disagreement around making that happen. And then also learning opportunities, bringing people together, having people who might not see eye to eye have the opportunity to break bread together, talk about their differences, start to build those trusts and relationships that will be needed for long-term success. So in my current role, I serve as the Chief of Staff for the Water Caucus, which is a group of bipartisan, bicameral legislators and staff working on water issues across the state. And in this past session, we had a lot of success, and I really appreciate all of the work that Association of Oregon Counties has done and individual commissioners on this issue. Advocacy by AOC and individual commissioners has made a lot of this possible. I also would say that a lot of these things are informed by place-based work, like the work conducted in the 3 counties of the North Coast. So water infrastructure funding is it is a big issue. It's going to continue to be a big issue. So having an understanding and an inventory with specific asks and dollar amounts of what infrastructure is needed, especially as it relates to unlocking housing. The county, I would definitely recommend that the county have that list and support communities in making those requests. Within the 23 session, again, with AOC's support, $2 million was advocated to a now permanent fund to support place-based integrated water resources planning. The state of Oregon prior to this time has not had a permanent program to support water planning, integrated water planning. So this is a really big win. And Clatsop County could be working proactively to develop an application for some of this funding. There's also funding at the federal level for this type of work. So to the extent you want to bring people together around this and actually start to think about how to develop a plan, this money is out there. There's also been investments at the state level in updating the water availability model, as well as groundwater recharge assessments for all basins across the state. The state is currently scoping and/or doing this work. Oftentimes, the state is not doing this in close coordination or consultation with counties. So I think there's a real opportunity, again, for the county to advocate for some consultation on these projects and then understand how you can use this data to inform your own planning processes. There was also funding and 3 positions at the Oregon Association of Water Utilities to conduct a statewide vulnerability assessment for small and very small community water systems. These are oftentimes our most vulnerable water systems, volunteer run without a whole lot of money. And what we're seeing across the state is a lot of these are flying under the radar and failing. And so this is an attempt to help the state understand the magnitude of this issue. And I think partnership with counties could really increase the effectiveness of this study. Finally, 8 positions were created within the OSU extension program, specifically to help with agricultural water management technical assistance. 6 of these positions will be spread across the state in order to develop region-specific knowledge and practices that help to increase the resilience of agricultural producers, recognizing that the climate and crops and culture really differ in places across the state, and we can't be developing kind of statewide strategies for agricultural products. We really need to be producing region-specific strategies. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harmony. Appreciate the presentation and a lot of information there. I do agree that the first step would be to synthesize some of the data that's already been and the studies that have already been done. And I recognize 2 of the firms that did some of that studies. I know Murray Smith and Associates was one of them, and then Peter Moore. I don't remember if he was working for Jordan Ramus at the time, but one of the other firms that did a water study and a regional water study. I know there's a lot of good work that's been done. So it'd be great to kind of get it all compiled and then be able to make a decision from there on how we want to proceed. Any questions from or comments, Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. I want to appreciate the pleasure of working with Harmony to have someone with her scope and her depth whose mind is for how do we develop inclusive systems that are effective in meeting human needs, animal needs, plant needs in every aspect of water, which is vital for all of it. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you, Harmony. And our solution to the COVID issue was to sit in my backyard outdoors. So that works too. Now, as I'm moving forward into the specific issue of an area like Evergreen Acres, what I see is what's missing for me as a county administrator is the legal structure, because there are municipal water systems, there are special district water systems, and then there are private water systems. I'm told there are 3,400 systems in the state of Oregon, and I would say the care and feeding of them is so different. I'm told that, for example, OHA has some control over the quality of the water, but not on the quantity of the water because of state and federal law. See, you know all this. It's like, this is so complicated. How do we define a piece of it? How do we have a sequenced, logical holding on and increasing not only our data collection, but I would call it our administrative capacity, because that's the part that I see missing. There are all of these little bits and pieces floating around or sinking like stones, but there's no integration of it into a unified whole because it's so contentious. Commissioner Magruder, who's been very active in this from Columbia County, she has this phrase, this tongue-in-cheek thing that says, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. And Harmony, you navigated that well. Well, it continues, doesn't it? Because we have issues here. When we just did our strategic planning, we had, 5 or 6 water issues that we saw, including dikes and levees. How do we encompass this? And I think, Mr. Chair, I think this is an issue for staff and the board to wrestle with about how do we go forward to have an integrated, effective solution on something that is essential for all life. Can you help me? Somebody? Gina, maybe?
Well, Commissioner Thompson, I'm always willing to help you. As you know, the Board of Directors for the Association of Oregon Counties decided to cut out the County Solutions Program as a cost-saving mechanism for our budget. So we don't have the capacity at AOC, but what we do have the capacity for is to lobby at the legislature for more county capacity, so you have it at your level. That's one thing, but I would turn it over to you commissioners, as well as Manager Boone to talk about what it is that Clackamas County wants to do next.
I would add one thing. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. This is every step that you take is a meaningful step, and it might not feel that way, but I work with basins who have been working on this issue for 30 years. And I don't, every time I say that, people are like, they get a little bit overwhelmed. But this issue is really never done. It's just, are you taking proactive steps in the right direction? And with $2 million in funding for place-based water planning, now is really a great opportunity to be assembling people and starting to think about the sequencing of how to bring people together around this issue, because there is funding available for that purpose, and there was not before.
Thank you, Harmony. Do we have any other comments, questions at this time? And again, as I thought, the first step is to make sure that we've got the right data and getting all of those studies kind of compiled. Granted, some of them are outdated, but it would be good to have, the same kind of playbook that we're all operating out of. So I think that would be my first suggestion. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. And Harmony, you had a suggestion. You said one of those resources you thought was perhaps the most effective one to pursue on that page earlier in your presentation. Could you take us further in that?
There's just one that I thought it would be interesting for those who are, maybe are new to this issue, to get a broad brush overview of water in the county. It's not necessarily better than the other ones. It's hard to differentiate. The ones that I selected for that slide, I'd be happy to send links to each of those, because I do think each one of those does provide a fairly good high-level overview to start understanding big picture issues, maybe not hyper local issues, but basin-wide understanding.
I think that'd be great. Very helpful. Yeah, Commissioner Thompson.
Well, so I'm loath to let this go. I've been having conversations with Chris Farrar for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years about this stuff. He's going to cycle off our planning commission, and he's an hydrologist, and so he has that knowledge base. I don't know if it's possible administratively for the County Board of Commissioners to give a charge to the Planning Commission to have an ad hoc committee on water. I don't know if that's a logical administrative step to take, because that would locate it someplace within Clatsop County. We already have staff supporting the Planning Commission. I'm looking to do this as efficiently and effectively as possible. County Manager, I haven't said this to you before, so can I put you on the spot and ask if that seems like a reasonable suggestion to you?
Well, what I'm Chair for the members of the board, what I might say is that there's a lot of different things, obviously, and I think Harmony was right when she said that there's so many different elements to the water umbrella, that I think part of what the county has to really do is really two things. One is we have to continue to deal with the issues that just come to the fore. And that's one of the things that we're in this kind of response mode right now with a lot of things. I look back, the board has been taking some initiatives with water, like supporting the purchase of the watershed down in the Arch Cape, water district. We've been partnering with the various watershed councils in grant applications, providing in-kind support. We're looking for to partner with Crest and others on the NOAA grant to look at some of the flooding dike levee issues, at the county, which is about a $2 million grant request. We are dealing with Evergreen Acres and some other small, water systems. So one is, water has been something that the county has been engaged on for a long period. I think what the issue is really multi-leveled. One is, yes, data and coordination is really vital, but we're also talking like with these small water systems, we're really talking about governance. We're really talking about what are the statutory frameworks that exist now to support, residents, businesses receiving safe, consistent, reliable drinking water. And I think that's a totally different element. And so I don't know that there's a one way to approach this water issues. There's going to be multiple ways and really multiple tentacles as we go through that. So to answer your question, Commissioner Thompson, I think certainly that might be one of the tentacles, but I think what we have to do is sit down with the board and with staff, and we can do this as part of the strategic planning process over the next period, is to say, what are these various tentacles, and then what is the right approach for the county to be relevant in whatever way? Because obviously counties have very limited resources. We have constrained roles in many cases, which is oftentimes statutory. But I think we just need to sit down and say, okay, what are those different tentacles and what's the approach that would be successful, and being mindful of all the other authorities that are out there and all the other roles. So I think that there are things we can do, but I also want to just kind of support the complexity of the issue that was reinforced through the presentation. So I think we're just going to have some more conversation and then figure out what those different roles are, if that makes sense. Thank you.
And I would agree, County Manager, I'd like an opportunity to kind of digest this, and then I think the timing is right while we're doing our strategic planning update to bring these as a discussion item and have the board weigh in. Any other comments, questions? Harmony?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I would be happy to make myself available to the commissioners and to staff to talk through how to turn what was learned through the knowledge exchange into a course of action. I'd be happy to do that without charging you. I think in our work with AOC, like, we just really want to make sure that this information that was gathered is meaningfully used and pointing you in the right direction. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that offer. Gina?
Thank you, Harmony, for that. I appreciate that. Commissioner Thompson, I wonder if you or one of the other commissioners could reach out to the commissioners from Union County. Commissioner Donna Beveridge chaired her place-based planning grant process that they felt was very successful. I think that would be good. And then Harmony, maybe we can talk so we can get more information to them about the place-based water planning grants that are available, and make sure that we have a path forward in the legislature, if that's the route that you choose, Clatsop County chooses.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, because that's where AOC can really be helpful.
Yeah. Any other comments, Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, sir. Sorry. I'm happy to reach out to Commissioner Beveridge. She and I have discussed this, but more substantively with the understanding and the support of the rest of the board, I can reach out to her in a different way. So I'm happy to carry that forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Appreciate you doing that. Any other comments, questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation, Harmony. Thank you for bringing it to us, and Gina Nickel, thank you for your leadership. And this is not the first time. I mean, this is the last time we're going to discuss this. We're going to definitely take this back up, and appreciate the presentation very much.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Next item is the semi-annual update on veteran services. And see Carl Wiley, our Veteran Service Officer, is with us. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Coyle. Good to see you all, commissioners, county manager, everyone here. I'm going to try to share this screen here real quick. Seems like that may be working. Can everyone see the slides there?
Yes.
Great. I was wondering because I am on a single screen laptop at home. But thank you so much for seeing me again and allowing me to bring this information to you. So I've been in the seat here closing in on a year, and it's been 6 months since our last update. Just briefly here, I'll go over from what's kind of transpired in the office from July to December, what our current operations are looking like, what our future operations are projected to be as we move into this next half of a fiscal year moving forward, and then any questions that we have at the end. So between July of last year and December of last year, this is kind of the nuts and bolts of what the numbers look like. These are the different claims that we've had filed through the office, 76 disability claims. I won't read them all off to you. DIC is dependency and indemnity compensation, which is a survivor's benefit that pays out more typically than pension, as it's not a needs-based program. In total, there's been 123 claims filed for basically compensation on one level or another from throughout the county in the last 6 months. And that has resulted in the total payments between the monthly payments that have come in and retroactive sums that have come through, about a little over $250,000 of income to our veterans here in the county. And continuing with that 6 month look back here, we've got just the number of office visits, home visits where I've gone out throughout the county, new veterans that have come to the office that had not been registered in the system or sought assistance before. And then those new claims filed for those veterans, plus some healthcare enrollment. Outreach over the last 6 months, continued to attend the bi-monthly Veterans Breakfast. However, that has since gone on hiatus because the Portlight Cafe where it was being held is no longer in operation. I've also worked with Clatsop County Sheriff's Department and now working with the courts to stand up the Veterans Court on their steering committee to kind of give that VA benefits perspective for our veterans. Provided some outreach at the county fair. And then just in November, end of November, beginning of December, I had noticed in the last 6 months that there was just kind of stovepipes of communication between our veteran service organizations, American Legions, VFWs, and their different auxiliaries throughout the county. So I made an effort to just bring people together, not so much as another action group or coalition or anything like that, but just have a sit down to the veteran organization leaders or their representatives to share problems that they may be having within their communities, but then also resources that they can spread across the county to help people and the veterans that are having issues through other organizations. Just to kind of flatten communication was the main perspective there. And we're going to meet on a quarterly just to have a sit down and see what we can do to further assist veterans that are outside of their particular span of control. Going the wrong way. All right. That moves us into our current operations. And you'll see here it says living veterans with recorded benefits. So the system we use being VetraSpec means that it has to be folks that have come in and taken Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs as their power of attorney or representative to the Department of Veteran Affairs. And then they've made some updates. So I've had to kind of delineate, these are the number of living veterans for whom with whom we are currently working across the county. And you can see the specific cities and incorporated communities or non-incorporated communities kind of looking there. What our demographic looks like. The preponderance of our veterans are in Astoria, and then it kind of just goes down from there. I'll figure it out. Also, during these past, here in these past 6 months, currently working with 12 survivors of the 241 deceased veterans on record here in our county. Those were veterans that had worked through our offices, and then when they passed on, I've been able to work with their survivors to report the passing to the VA, get them their burial benefits, pensions, national cemetery burial. By and large, most veterans here in the county are still seeking assistance with disability, service-connected disability, and then their non-service connected pension claims. They're just looking for that added income that they've earned through their service that they're entitled to. Finally, on this slide here, yeah, the demand for service continues to outweigh availability of manpower. However, that is something that tomorrow, Viviana put forward a grant with the help of the county to get a full-time equivalent for, I believe it was an 18-month grant to bring on a full-time equivalent for an assistant. So the average wait time for appointments will likely probably still stay the same. However, the average comms backlog will greatly diminish, I imagine, as it won't just be me checking and responding to all the different communications that come through. Moving the next slide here into future operations. As I noted, tomorrow we have interviews. We're looking to hire here within the next few weeks, bring on a veteran service officer assistant. We'll get them trained in their appropriate roles through Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs Training Office, and then just training through on the job as well. And continue to partner with our veteran org leads to open up the crosstalk and resource sharing here in the county, and also to encourage them to not just look to the County Veteran Service Office as someone who sets up all of the different events and is the key holder or the gatekeeper for those types of things, but to encourage them to stand up different events or outreach opportunities within the county as well. Just to kind of maximize the amount of people that are looking to volunteer and help. Speaking on the volunteer side, with Amanda over at the county, we've been working with ODVA to build a volunteer base here in the community, which will be helpful in getting the word out and then leveraging that to support outreach events. Finally, I'm working with Viviana and the college right now to try to get a steady office date or office location and day during the week or month to provide office hours down in Seaside in the South County, if you will, as there's been some requests for that, and I want to make sure that I'm respecting the needs of the veterans in the county as they give them to me. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions. This is my contact information here, but is there any questions? All right, Commissioner Thompson, I saw your hand pop up first there. If we can go with you, ma'am.
Well, let me yield to Commissioner Toyoka because he has longer active service than I do. I'll speak after him. Thank you.
Roger. Yes, sir.
Carl, thank you for all you do for our local veterans. Really appreciate it. You made a statement, on your slide too, the breakfast is suspended. But how many people are showing up to that breakfast?
The last few I went to, I would see during the time that I was there, 20 to 40 veterans would come through there.
Yeah, because I've attended them long previously, and it's wonderful. But what's being done, just contact me later. I would like to offer up in a stopgap because I know it's a great thing to honor especially the older veterans that are out there. we'd like to host the breakfast in the meantime. We could cater it and host our veterans here for breakfast once a month, as a stopgap. I'd love to do that.
And where would you like to do that, sir?
We could do it at our business, Lums Auto Center, and we have
Okay.
large area, so we can accommodate the veterans and probably hosts, cater it with local vendors. We can give everybody, all these different vendors a chance to help us support local veterans,
Sure.
bring more awareness.
Do you have a point of contact there at LUMS to whom I could reach out to work the coordination side of that?
Myself, or actually truly, I'd go through Marla Olstead. She's probably a much more reliable source than I am.
Roger that.
And
I
I'll
will,
give Marla your information too, Carl.
thanks so much, Commissioner Toyoko. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Commissioner Toyoka, I really appreciate you offering that, and that's fantastic use of that wonderful public space that you have at your business. I have a conflict that came up here, and I have to leave, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Vice Chair Bangs to conduct the rest of the meeting, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, just as we just want to, do this as a way of just helping out and honoring some of the previous veterans in our area. So,
Yes, sir. So I will reach out or stand by for Marla, I guess, to reach out to me. That way I'll have her contact information, and we'll work with the local legions, VFWs, et cetera, to build that process. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
perfect.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, sir. Well, and the Commissioner Toyoka is the guy in charge, so you've started at the top. He's the one who can make it happen. Oh, yeah, come on. Okay.
And that's why I asked for a point of contact, because yes.
Okay, so my question is, I've been hearing about unclaimed cremains of veterans. Is that an issue in Clatsop County?
I know that that's something that was being, it was kind of on the tail end of the process of finding them. As I was coming on in February of last year, I've not heard anything further. I don't have the information off the top of my head on how many unclaimed remains were found in the county, but I haven't had local undertaker offices, funeral service offices beating down the door either. But I can look in and see what that final number was.
I'd be grateful. And if there's some support that you need for that, I'd love to be in touch with you about that. I'm happy to advocate for you to be able to meet that need. I just don't know to what extent it exists here, but I'm happy to help.
I know that there is if there are unclaimed remains, that they can be buried through the National Cemetery or locally, and there is those claims are filed by the person providing the service to the VA to be reimbursed for. So I will see if there are any still outliers here in the county that have not been properly interred and honored, and go from there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Commissioner Webb?
Yes, thank you so much. This was a wonderful report for those of us who love performance measurement. Really, I can't believe what you and Viviana have been able to accomplish, being basically one full-time person short. So here we are once again. We do this every 6 months. You mentioned very quickly, I thought, was it 2 different positions or just one? One that looked like an administrative assistant, which I can well understand would maybe be very helpful for you. Because it looks to me as if you spend an awful lot of time just setting up meetings and et cetera. So is this position going to be permanent now? The assistant? Or was that just a one-time grant? I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the way you described that.
Lou?
Uh-oh. Yeah,
I'm sorry, I cut out.
yes.
I went ahead and shut off my video in the hopes that it addresses the internet connectivity issue there.
Good. It helps on my end. So did you hear my full question?
The question stopped at, I spend a lot of time doing administrative actions and setting up meetings, and then it cut out from there.
Okay. The position that you mentioned here of having an assistant, is that permanent or was that an 18-month grant? Can you clarify that for me?
So as I understand it, the grant is an 18-month grant that will pay for a full-time equivalent during that time. And during that time, Viviana will continue to, and of course I will help where I can, especially now that I have more bandwidth, to solicit further funds through grant opportunities and those kinds of things, to continue to pay for this position.
Okay. If you had your choice of a permanent, perpetually funded administrative assistant and a number 2 position like yours, which would you take?
A veteran service officer, a fully accredited veteran service officer
Would really help.
It would help because it would open the bandwidth for us, that individual and I, to perform those administrative tasks, because we'd be dispersing the claims load as well. Because yes, completing the appointments and filing claims and following up on claims is a burden in and of itself. But if we could spread that across, then it would open that bandwidth for administrative duties as well.
Right. Well, I realize that we're certainly proposing a very constrained budget this year, but I really hope, fellow commissioners, we can figure out a way. I get more. I think I get more phone calls, and when I'm meeting with local citizens, more interest in this whole issue. And I think the numbers here are staggering. I mean, we have 1,000 people and just probably looking out my window who need someone available. And this is something that we've been kicking down the road for a number of years. And I just, Tillamook actually created I think it was some kind of a sales tax, some kind of an additional component in their taxes to fund another VSO, and they have a smaller population than we do. So I hope that Commissioner or County Manager Boone can do something to put back on our to-do list and in our strategic planning that this is a chronic need in our population. And I think we've got to deal with it. Every time one of our excellent VSOs comes to us with these reports, we are unable to solve the most important concern that they have. So I just like to put that out there. I think this is something that we need to be dealing with. I think that we suffer from I suffer probably isn't the right word, but we are faced with what many of our citizens face in being in a rural area, which means that they can't take a 20-minute car ride and get the kind of services that they need. And so this is just an enormous need in our community. And I hope we can add it to our strategic planning list, I guess is what I'm saying. Thank you. And thank you, Carl, again, for all that you do, and thank Viviana. Oh, it looks like Viviana actually is here. Thank you, Viviana, for lending such wonderful support to this action. It's so necessary. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the advocacy, and I appreciate your kind words. Commissioner Thompson, did you have another question, ma'am?
I just am at a loss to consider how to add additional services, no matter how much they're needed, how much good they could do, how much suffering they would relieve, when we're looking at a habitat conservation plan that promises to reduce our revenues on one of our most significant portions of our county budget. So the distress I feel at the needs now and going forward that I don't know how to meet, given a lack of revenue. Good wishes and good intentions won't pay those bills. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson, for that follow-up. And thank you, Mr. Wiley, for your comments today and your robust presentation. I'm really appreciative of all the work that you're doing and the multiple hats that you are wearing, and look forward to hearing about a potential breakfast relocation moving forward, because that is very important for our older population. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to our second quarter financial update presented by Andrew Sullivan, our finance director.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to provide a financial update through the second quarter of the current fiscal year. Let me get this pulled up. Can everybody see my screen okay? Fantastic. Okay, so as we are 50% of the way through the current fiscal year, we wanted to provide a financial update on the current status of the county and where we sit currently through December. I would say in large part, the two main metrics that we use to evaluate this information, one being, yes, we're 50% through the year, and where are different areas, at that mark above or below, and why. And the second metric being, due to just the cyclical nature of these areas, if they are above or below, that 50% mark, is it indicative and similar to what they've experienced in, I'll say, in just the previous last fiscal year, and if we're on track. So initially, I wanted to take a look at the general fund and all of the departments that reside under the general fund. This information has everything to do with the current revenues that have been brought in through December. Again, you'll see some areas are high, some are low, but they all track very, very closely to where we were last year, which is a good indicator. The only, I would say, department that stands out would be 1990. This 3.8 million has all to do with a result of the amended budget of the $3.6 million in emergency order funding for the homeless declaration, which is a good thing. We have more money to do more good things. That's the only real area that would kind of jump out. Everybody seems to be on track, and overall, for the general fund, we're at 59% to the budget compared to 68% to the budget that we were last year. But again, the real driver that's bringing this number to 59 instead of closer to 68 would be this item right here having to do with the emergency order funding. As we move over to the appropriations, again, I'd say the 50% indicator, I'd say, is a bit more useful when we're talking about appropriations. We don't want to be overspent at this point in the year, but if we are, and something happened in an emergency and we had to use funds, sooner than later, we're always digging to provide a good narrative and rationale as to why. But again, in large part, everybody's, you look to this far right column, everybody's below 50%, which again, this is exactly where we want to be. Here again, the only item that we're going to point out here is this again has to do with the 3.6 million in emergency order funding. So overall, remarkably, we're right on where we were last year at 32%. So well below 50, very much on track to where we were last year for the general fund. So all good indicators that we're doing the right things. As we move towards all the other funds outside of the general fund. Again, this is for everyone's revenues that have been brought in through December. Very, very similar. I mean, some of these percentages that you're seeing could be a little misleading just due to the nature of the balance. But we have all these pointed out. I can speak to them relatively briefly here. For the general fund stabilization, we are ahead, but that is all to do with interest that we earn. Has the dividends have just been higher. So this is a great problem to have. In addition to the 090 fund for the COVID stimulus dollars, there was a reimbursement of funds of about 500,000 that were initially provided to the Jewel School District for some broadband work. County Manager Boone can probably speak further to that if you wanted to, as far as that project is concerned. And then outside of that, this insurance reserve has all to do with workers' comp, and that can be a little complicated just by the nature of how that fund works. Dividends are always posted a year in the arrears, and it's just due to the nature of how workers' compensation claims are being received and processed. As we move into the appropriations, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but these are all good signs. We're all areas are well underspent, below the 50% mark. And again, very, very similar to where we were last year, even a little bit less than. So we have room to spend at this stage in the fiscal year. I'd say this is a great place to be in the event something unplanned comes up. We have room to deal with that. So I guess I'll end with just mentioning here, while this is a quarterly update, internally, we are reviewing these balances throughout the month, every month. County Manager Boone, Assistant County Manager Steele, and myself are monitoring all these areas very, very closely to make sure that we're on track. We're not just kind of waiting for the quarter to end or for the year to end. Anything that comes up out of the ordinary, we are addressing it with those areas individually. And that seems like I went through that very quickly, but we'll see if anybody has any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It looks like Commissioner Thompson has a comment or question.
Right. And thank you, ma'am. Sir, when we're looking at your report, I think I understand it, which is good. I see that the asterisks about there are contingencies within funds. I imagine that means it's so complicated that if you gave us all the detail, it would be confusing. Is that an accurate assumption on my part?
I would say that could be a fair statement. When reviewing this type of information, if we were to have all the contingency funds loaded, I think it could be very, very misleading. These are actual balances compared to the most relevant budgeted appropriations that we've adopted. So I concur with your statement.
Follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
This makes sense to me now. I'm anticipating that when we have our citizen budget advisors work with us later in the budget process, we'll need to explain to them not only the data, but the logic behind everything. And I assume that you're anticipating that. I got an email from Norman Brown saying he's relocating and he won't be with us, which is a big loss to that citizen budget committee. So going forward, I'm just anticipating how we'll communicate effectively and accurately with our citizen budget advisors in the process. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I think that is all part of the process. I mean, just to put a report together and say, here are the numbers. that only takes you so far. We have to provide that context, especially with, you know, a budget committee that may be completely new to the process and how governmental budgeting works. So it's very, very important that we're providing narratives that make sense and that are easily understood. So that is the goal.
Excellent. Do we have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you, Finance Director Sullivan, for
Thank you.
your transparency and a really good presentation today. I am definitely one for fiscal responsibility right now, so I appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and move forward to our next topic, which is the Parks Master Plan update discussion presented by Steve Meschke, our Natural Resources Manager. Steve?
All right, thank you. Let me see if I can get the share screen up here. It's gonna work. There it goes. Okay, can you guys see that or?
Looks good, thank you.
Okay, yeah, it looks weird. I got all kinds of things going. Anyway, so been meaning to do this for a while. There's been lots of discussions with our Reclands Advisory Committee as far as our Parks Master Plan, which was last done in 2006. We've had several people approach the parks with projects, different things they'd like to see done, and just there's a lot of questions as far as the, you know, where's the parks going and what are we doing. So I just want to give everyone kind of a quick brief of the county park system. I don't know how familiar you guys are with it. So the Clatsop County has 12 county parks, and you can see by the map here, we're kind of sprinkled throughout the whole county. So we got a pretty wide spread of everything. We're not all consolidated in one area. We have 573 acres of parkland. The largest park is Cullowhee Lake. And out of all of our parks, they're all on some type of waterway or a lake. So it's kind of fits into what a lot of our stuff does. So types of recreational uses, boating facilities, boating access like Westport, waterway access for fishing. We got picnic areas, mountain bike trails, hiking trails, wildlife viewing. And we have one ball field in Napa, and that's out at Big Creek County Park. Some of the things that the county parks doesn't offer. We don't have any campgrounds. A lot of people always asking about campgrounds, but we don't have any campgrounds. We don't do any sporting programs, and we don't have any beach access. And we don't have any indoor or any like recreation centers or anything like that. So here's kind of some numbers of what our uses are. So our annual park passes, you can kind of see the last 4 years, how many park passes we sold. You can see the day passes at Cullowhee Lake and John Day. Those are our 2 fee parks. And Carnahan, we charge fees in the summertime there. So you can kind of see the usage there. The annual park passes are sold, you know, those guys are coming and going all the time. So we don't really have a true count of how many other people are coming in on those park passes that are sold. And then the Cullowhee Lake Shelter reservations, that's an easy one to track. You can kind of see how many of those. And those are primarily in the summer months. That's like a June through October or early October, September is when the shelters are all reserved. Pretty much July and August is our 2 busiest months. Just kind of a breakdown of our staffing. So I'm only half-time parks, and then my other half is fisheries. We have 1 parks foreman and we have 1 park ranger full-time. And then we have our administrative assistant, Erica. She's only 0.2 on parks. The rest of her time is on fisheries. So with those 12 sites that we're maintaining, it's 2.7 people doing that. We do have a park host at Cullowhee Lake, and we do have a park host at Westport, and they help us out with cleaning the bathrooms. And Cullowhee Lake, we do pay them a stipend of $600 a month because they do so much. They help deal with our picnic shelter reservations on the weekend, and they just help out with a lot of the extra maintenance that we have out there at the park. Parks budget. So just real brief and simple. So you can see our parks maintenance account. Our total parks budget is $409,000 this year. Not a lot of change. You can see most of that's in personnel services. Only 72,000 is for our materials and supplies for paying our bills and buying everything we need. And here's kind of a breakdown of where our revenue comes from. So we get money from the state, from the RV funds, and we get money from the state Marine Board. That's $49,000 a year. Our day use fees and park reservations, $51,000. A transfer from the Parks and Acquisition Land Fund. I'll get to that in a second. We'll talk about that when we do transfer $50,000 a year into the parks budget, and then the rest of it is made up through the general fund, $260,000. And so I mentioned the Parks and Acquisition Fund. So this fund was set aside when they sold Delora Beach over to the state parks. This money was set aside, and it was to be used for capital improvement projects and grants in the park system. Currently, we have $741,000 left in that fund. And then each year we do a $50,000 transfer to the general fund to cover the parks maintenance side of our project or our budget. And then we usually allocate 20,000 towards projects and grant things that come up, and then our indirect costs. So we spend about $70,000 a year out of that project. Now this is one of the topics we've had over the years. So this is just fun. It just keeps going down and down and down, and eventually it's going to end. And then at that point, we're going to have to come up with a way to make up for that 50,000 that we're transferring out of this fund into the general fund, into our parks maintenance fund, and then just the money that we use to help with other projects. So it's kind of a slowly dying fund there. Our last Parks Master Plan, when we did this, the committee came up with 5 goals that the parks based their operations around. It was a parks management, as far as, you know, taking care of the parks, the fundings, the community health and environmental stewardship, and the recreational connections. And a lot of these goals are still good. I think there's probably a lot of the changes that could be made, and a lot of that just, you know, there's been so much growth in the county, and there's been so many different recreational things going on that there's probably some other things that we get to add to these goals to kind of help direct the parks where they're going. This was out of our Parks Master Plan from 2006, and this is just one screenshot. So this is kind of a list of capital improvement projects that were identified in 2006. Now, some of these have been completed, but others have not. And there's been lots of discussions at our meetings adding more. So just kind of prioritizing all these new projects that have come up. You know, and the biggest one is like the Colucci Creek. Since this last master plan, now this has become, Colucci Creek's kind of became the mountain bike capital down there. So we have a lot of infrastructure, we put a new restroom in down there. The guys want to do more trails down there, and we're like, wait, we need to slow down and think about this. Is this what we really want to do? So there's a lot of stuff that can be added to this. And then in part of your packet, I gave you a letter from the Recreational Lands Planning Committee, and they kind of highlighted the items that they feel that need to be addressed in the Parks Master Plan. I didn't have a copy of that screen. You guys have a copy of it in your packet there. The committee is just anxious to do something, but I wanted to meet with you, the commissioners, to see what your thoughts were with the parks, what directions we should be going. If you think this is a good time for us to do a parks plan update. I know the funding is tight with the forestry issues going on. There is Oregon State Parks grant that's opening here. The deadline is May. There's a $50,000 grant, planning grant that's available. It's a 40% match. That's something that I could put in for. And I just like to see what your guys' thoughts are on the plan. If this is something that the commissioners feel is necessary, or should we hold off or move on it? And let me see if I can get out of this and we can open it up to questions.
I see
we go.
County Manager, you had some comments.
Thank you, Chair Bangs, members of the board. I just want to take a couple seconds before your board may have a conversation or have questions for Steve. And part of this is just as you enter into a potential master planning process, one of the things that I always think about is really what is possible. And so, you know, and one of the overriding issues right now for the county is just uncertainty. And so as you look at going through a master planning process, I think the board needs to provide some input about whether or not the county role would change. And I think there's some very limiting factors to any expansion to a county role. This is certainly a question for your board and not the county manager, but I think you know, you can take a master planning process that would expand the role of the county in parks. And this is primarily a general fund activity. And so at this point, I think with so much uncertainty in front of us, if it is your desire to go through a master planning process, I just think there's some context that the board would have to provide to the planning process, which would not be a great expansion of the general fund to parks. Because as you know, 50% of our public safety is funded from the general fund. And so, and if we, you know, if we experience the kind of reductions that we have been told from Oregon Department of Forestry that we're going to see in the future, you know, we're just going to be trying to maintain basic service levels eventually. And so I just want to share that as just context. Certainly, I don't ever think planning's bad. It's just what is the context for the planning that I think is important to hear from your board. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, County Manager Boone. Well, yeah. So I have a couple of questions. I'm your friend, but I'm going to talk about money, okay? I love recreation. It's important for physical health, mental health, every way you can slice it. What we're looking at, though, is how do we support it? Steve, I have a question for you, and I'm springing this on you, so I apologize. If we
That's
spent, okay, good. If we spent only the interest and not the principal from that fund that we've been steadily depleting, how much interest money would we have to spend on parks every year? Do you know? Because if you don't, I bet
I think
the county manager
I
still has.
think it's like $15,000 right around there.
Okay, thank you. I would like us to do accurate, conservative budgeting going forward on recreation. And I would think that what we need to look at is alternative forms of funding besides from that diminishing fund, because people tell me never touch your principal, only spend your interest. That makes sense to me on this parks revenue thing, so that we have a consistent, reliable, under our control resource. That makes sense. Besides, I think we need a contingency fund for parks, and that fund would seem to be it for me. Number two, I think we need to look at alternative forms of funding, and that seems to me to be the users, number one. And when I say users, I would hope that if we had a user fee, that there would be some kind of discounted user fee for county residents and for seniors and for low income, you know what I mean? Some kind of a sliding scale based on ability to pay, and that rewarded county residents, because we are already paying for the parks through our tax dollars. So that's part of it. But then the third piece of the funding stool I'd be looking at is to consider increased transient occupancy tax, or use of transient occupancy tax dollars that we already are collecting to offset what I expect to be a greatly reduced availability that's currently at $259,000 from the general fund. Because when we're looking at the kinds of fiscal constraints that we see projected going forward, I think right now is the time to do immediate adjustments and turning to different revenue sources than our general fund, with every great respect, affection, and support for parks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, Steve, am I not remembering correctly, or did we not have an item in the budget to do this master plan in our present budget?
We did not, that was the previous year, so we had nothing. I can't remember, or if we did, it was only $70,000, and I think that was mainly, it was a planning. I don't think it ended up in this year. It got passed over on this budget. It was the year before. So
I don't
if I
understand,
remember right,
but we didn't spend it last year. So
we
where's,
did not.
what happened to that money?
It just went back into the general fund. It stayed in the capital improvement funds where we asked for it from, because we did it the one year, and then last year we didn't do it. We didn't actually ask for it last year.
Okay, thank you. I was wrong about that. I would just like to say that as we have in the past few years been trying to update a lot of our very old plans. This parks plan is now 20 years old, and it seems to me that it's even difficult to actually know how to run our parks program without having some eye toward the future about what we need. We have a very robust parks advisory group. They're really a fabulous group to work with. And they have been, and some of those, a couple of them were part of the 2006 plan as well. I certainly understand the reluctance of this board. But you know, we're all acting as if this HCP thing, don't you all realize, I mean, maybe we need to have a special board meeting to talk about this mindset that we're in, that the sky is falling. And I think we're doing our citizens a very, very great disservice when we stop planning for things. We have enormous surveys that tell us, I know some people on this board don't think that that tourism is a viable sector, but it is, folks. It's a hell of a lot of the money that comes into this county. And we know from the surveys of our tourists that they are increasingly interested in resources here away from the beach. How many times, ask somebody in David Reed's shop, how many times people walk in there and say, is there any old growth forest in Clatsop County that we can go visit? They want to get out. They want places where they can ride their bikes. They want places where they can camp. It's a huge need for us. We have like one private campground, to my knowledge. This is a sector of our county that needs to grow. We make money when people recreate in our county. It's good for us. And the idea that of all the plans that we have spent a lot of money on and are still working on, that somehow a parks master plan that's 20 years old doesn't bother anybody. I'm not talking about building a new park. I'm talking about taking a close look at, you know, there are a couple of our parks that we can actually close down and save money. But we need to take a look at why we're in the parks business. That's what planning does. It says, okay, we have a responsibility, or do we, to have parks. It's asking some very fundamental question that may imply no new resources being spent, but perhaps moving around some of them. We're starting to hear from people in unincorporated Clatsop County who are asking us for simple things like playgrounds, places that that perhaps in unincorporated areas we need to be thinking about in some of our more populated areas. Improvements to Big Creek, just some tweaking of some of our services. We just need to do some thinking about this. And I'm sorry, Steve, I thought that we had gotten this in the budget for this year. So I thought you were coming to us to say, what are your priorities? So I'm sorry, I misunderstood that completely, that we lost that chance last year. Is that what happened? Was what you're saying?
So, yeah, so we kind of, so the current budget we're in now, it is not there, but I guess why I'm here and talking to you today is we're coming into the new budget cycle. So do we push forward on this and put it in the budget? Because our budget cycle is starting up next month. Well, actually, yeah, next month. So the potential, if we put in for that grant, the deadline is May 15th for putting in for the grant through state parks, and then it doesn't get awarded until this fall. And then we could start work on the plan next winter. Just the question is, is that the direction we want to go? Do we keep working with what we have, or how high a priority is it with the Board of Commissioners?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
The Reclands Committee has voiced their concerns with it. And you've been at a lot of the meetings. We've had people come and ask about the racetrack area out at Cullowhee Lake. We've had a butterfly house proposal. We've had a mountain bike proposal. We've had an ATV dirt bike proposal. We've had a lot of people asking about what to do with that property, and we've just kind of left it. We talk about the playgrounds at Big Creek. It's in the old plan, but is that something we really, like Dawn said, the biggest thing is what can we support? We're running around, luckily we have 2 guys now out in the field instead of 1. Before it was just Corey by himself and our seasonal guy. There's a lot of ground to cover and a lot of parks. I don't foresee us putting a bathroom and a playground in every park. If we did that, we'd need more staff, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I think we have to find that balance of what are we going to do? What's the directions with the parks?
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Yes, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions? Commissioner Toyoka, anything? Okay. So just to close, thank you so much for your time, Natural Resources Manager Meshke. We do appreciate it. I will say that I am hesitant to look at any additional spending or any additional allocations out of the general fund currently for myself personally. It is imperative to me to make sure that we have our County Sheriff's Department fully staffed and functional and 24-hour service to our community. And until we see more clarity into our future, I am really stuck on health and safety of our community as a first and primary priority for me moving into this next fiscal year. But that once we can see some stability in our future, I think that we can circle back, and because I agree, recreation is important. What you do is very important to our community and for our community, but also for our visitors. Unfortunately, as your budget showcased, is recreation doesn't actually make money to pay for itself. The funding has to come from somewhere. And so You know, and that's true across the board for state lands and county lands. Recreation doesn't fund itself. It has to come from somewhere. And though we find it very important, and I just want for complete clarity that it is very important, it's just we need to find a stable funding source. And oh, I see Commissioner Thompson has another comment. Commissioner Thompson?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree with Commissioner Webb that we ought to have a special meeting to talk about funding going forward, because I think it's clear that we have different points of view and different realities. So I think that's something I can agree with. I agree with your statement that recreation matters. Of course, we want to see it happen. I would just urge your committee, rather than looking to the general fund or spending down, sorry, we have bells here, or spending down the fund that you have, that you take a more entrepreneurial point of view and look for grants or other funding sources. Please come back to us with other funding options, because I want to support not only planning, but execution of your very important public service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? County Manager.
Thank you, Chair Banks, members of the board. What I might offer, if it makes sense to the board, is as Steve mentioned, the grant would not be due until May, I think you said, Steve. And so between now and May, we will at a staff level watch to see what may or may not be happening through the legislative session related to any initiatives for revenue replacement or anything else that may impact the county. But we'll keep that in mind, and then we'll be ready to put a grant application in May and see how it fares. If it looks like we are in a position where the board is ready to have some of those conversations, because I agree that planning is an important part of what the county does. My only question always is the context for the planning, because that's what is really going to drive a lot of the relevance of the plan itself. And so I think we still have time. So Steve and I and our legislative folks will look and see where we are. We'll circle back to your board if that makes sense, and just let you know whether or not there's an opportunity for us to go ahead and put in that grant application just for the money, just to do the plan update. So if that makes sense, we will keep that in the back of the mind in the coming months.
Perfect.
Thank you. Do we have anything for the good of the order before we close? All right, well, I would say that our work session is adjourned, and everybody have a great AC day and be safe.